Hey. Bryon in the building, apostle in the Lord's church. I'm here, my wife here eating her fajitas, her refried beans, her rice, and all of those good stuff. But I'm here, I got a good message for you guys. And so you might hear her in the back chomping, smacking, or whatever, but it's all good, right? And so I wanted to come to you from the subject of don't go back to Egypt. I think this is a very important subject because a lot of us get in a space where it's unfamiliar, and then we decide that it's probably better to go back. And I want to use this talking about the children of Israel, right? First thing I'll say is that it is a dangerous moment. There's a dangerous moment that comes after God delivered you, right? But before you fully trust Him. And so you've been delivered, but you don't fully trust Him, right? And it's the kind of moment where the freedom feels unfamiliar. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Where you had freedom, that you get free and you don't know what to do. I know when I got saved, and it's like He delivered. I wasn't using drugs. I wasn't smoking. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't doing the things that had a grip on me no longer. And I was free, but it was unfamiliar. And so it's that space where God delivered you. You feel it, don't trust Him. And then you start looking like, shoot, bondage started to look good. I may go back to bondage because it's maybe comfortable. I'm used to comfortability and toxicity. I'm used to chaos, and now it's quiet. It's quiet. And so Israel lived that moment, and I want to talk to you about it because I want to prevent you from going back, right? And so when you talk about the children of Israel, they was no longer slaves, right? But they weren't settled. You know, and we got Christians now that's no longer slave, but they not settled. They inconsistent. They unstable, right, baby? They unstable.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when your brain begin to heal, and you don't know what's going on, especially if you use some kind of substance or alcohol, something like that, and then you start healing, you deliver. You're no longer a slave, but you just not settled. You're not settled in it. And so it's that in-between place that I'm talking about. It's in that in-between place that for Israel, that their mind started to drift backwards. And so just know that you're not alone. If you've been in that place where you got free and freedom didn't look like you thought freedom would look, it didn't feel like you thought freedom would feel. Freedom started coming with responsibility and accountability, and freedom started requiring you to use faith, and freedom was just so unfamiliar when you hadn't been free for such a long time. And so this is what they said in Numbers 11:4-6. It said, and the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? We remember the fish, which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna. They say there's nothing at all besides this manna, this food from heaven, this angel food. There's nothing there but this manna before our eyes. Ain't that something? You know what, baby? These people can remember the menu. You know what I mean? They're coming out of slavery and they remember the menu. They remember the food. They remember the things that they eat, but they couldn't remember the miracles. They remember what fed their flesh. They fed their physical. They fed their appetite, right? But they didn't look at the provision. Right, that's crazy because they remember the food so much that they forgot about the chains. They remember the food so much that they forgot about the slavery and the torment and the straw being taken away, and they still had to make the same amount of bricks. They forgot about that. They remembered the food, but they forgot about the slavery. That's familiar to me because sometimes your mind plays tricks on you, and you start remembering good times and bad times. You minimize how bad it was, how much you heard it, how much you went through, and you started picking little parts out of it where your flesh felt good, right? And that's what the flesh do, right? It don't play the tape all out. It just play highlight reels like Facebook, like Instagram, like you know what I mean? Like TikTok. It just got clips of smiling, clips of feeling good, clips of stuff, but it edit the past. It edit the past, right? And so what it usually do, baby, is soften the bondage, right? It make the bondage not that bad. It minimize it. And then it exaggerate your discomfort. Exaggerate your discomfort in your present now. It started telling you, man, you don't got to go through this. Man, you shouldn't do this. God said he love you, but why this happening? God say this, but why this happening? But why he can't do this? Why he can't do it like that? But why it had to happen? But if it would have happened, and it start exaggerating the stuff that you're going through when you've been through so much worse. You know what I mean? And so what I realized is that Egypt wasn't just a place. It was a mindset. It was a mindset, right? And so it was less about the geographical location and more about this deeply ingrained way of thinking. This way of thinking that had shaped everything they did. All of the choices that they made, all the things that they did, you know what I mean? It shaped everything. And so they was free and physically, but mentally they still was in prison. Mm-hmm. They still was slave. They still was handicapped, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is a danger in going back. That's what I want to talk about. Number 2, there is a danger in going back. I'm talking to my wife, y'all. Y'all at our house, she eating, and I'm gonna eat in a minute. But it's a danger in going back. Tell your neighbor, it's a danger in going back. It's a danger in going back. And so God had already delivered them with miracles, with signs, with wonders, and with power, right? Mm-hmm. And they allowed their unbelief to cause something tragic to happen, right? Hebrews 3:19 say this. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. Man. So literally they failed because they didn't believe God. God gave them a promise. He gave them the provision. He said that they would win, they'll go in. But the Bible in Hebrews 3:19 says they could not enter because of unbelief. That's crazy. Listen, what about when the door opened and you your only obstacle? When you your own enemy? When you stop your feet from moving forward? When you stop the momentum of what God gave you? That's crazy because all the enemies are killed. All the enemies are silent. God gonna take care of them and you still can't win. They didn't go back mentally. They didn't go back physically, but mentally they never left. And that's the danger even in not moving forward, because it's a lot of people that got healed from drugs. I see that healed from alcohol, got healed from domestic abuse and adultery that happened, divorce and all of that. But their mind stay there. Right? They stuck. They stuck on what used to be. They stuck on how things used to be. You know what I was talking about today, and I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but I was talking to my son, and he was talking about my sister and us. He missed how we used to be, and initially he was telling me, Dave, we need to do this and we need to do this. And I said to him, man, I understand what you're saying. I said, we all got our own individual paths. This is what I say to him. I say, man, we was bonded because of trauma. I was like, we was close because we were surviving. And what we call love was just comfort in our misery. And it really wasn't the love. It was the feeling of just having somebody, whether they telling you wrong or right. Because the only true love comes from God. You know what I mean? And so I was like, I can't go back. And it can't be like it used to be because I ain't who I used to be. Right. And I say he dead. That Bryon, he dead. Mm-hmm. And so if we go, it can never go back, but we can move forward and we can have a better relationship and we can tell each other good things. How can it be good? I know you're saying the feeling of being around each other was good and protecting each other, but we still was telling each other bad stuff and enabling each other to do bad stuff, right? And so I don't want to go back to that because I'm not him anymore, right? And so because of their unbelief, they missed their inheritance. They couldn't move forward. So many people so stuck in the past, trying to get their youth back, trying to get what used to be back, trying to get that old thing back, trying to get the feeling back, right? And that they missed the inheritance. They missed the promise. They never moved forward, right? Unbelief doesn't just influence your decision, it also disqualifies you from your participating in God's plan. And so your unbelief is just ain't influencing you, it's disqualifying you. They got disqualified from the promise that God gave them. They got disqualified from entering into the land of milk and honey, right? They got disqualified when he had already gave them, not because of what somebody else did, but because they wouldn't believe. Because they won't believe. And so they couldn't even participate no more in the entering into the promise because of their unbelief. And here's the danger. I'm talking to y'all. I'm talking to my wife and I'm talking to y'all. Here's the danger. You can be delivered externally, right? But still bound internally. You ever see, in the AA rooms, they call them a dry drunk. They call them a dry drunk. They call them a nasty. They still a nasty person. They still got the behaviors. They still mean. They still toxic. They just not drinking them. They just not drinking them. And they'll brag about not drinking, but you nasty. Your character messed up. You a liar. You a thief. You cheating on your husband. You cheating on your wife. You don't do your kids well. You don't take care of them. You don't provide for them. But you stop drinking. And so you can be delivered externally and still be bound internally. You can leave Egypt, right? But if Egypt doesn't leave you, you will sabotage your own promise. I'm talking to you. You can leave Egypt, but if Egypt don't leave you, you will sabotage. And that's what I had to face when I moved geographically from Norfolk, Virginia to Winchester, Virginia. If I would have brought my Norfolk mindset, which I had to work out, it was hard, man. Because some of this stuff ingrained in you picked up from early, right? Today I was thinking about criminal behavior, right? And I remember when I was going to jail, they kept saying criminal thinking. And I realized I just realized this today. Some of the criminal thinking that I didn't even know I didn't know I had it because it came from my family. I was thinking criminal behavior had to come from criminals. But I learned criminal ways from what I seen in my house. And I identified as this the way that I ain't looking at it as criminal because I was taught it, I seen it, and it wasn't viewed as criminal. And so when people talk about criminal behavior, criminal thinking, I didn't think that because I didn't get it from the outside. I got it from my house. And so I couldn't even see it. And so I was engaging and doing things and thinking in a way that was toxic, but I learned it from my family, so I thought it was good. And so what that means is that your circumstances can change, right? You can get a new job, right? You can have a whole new environment. You can have new relationships. You can get married again. But if your mindset stay the same, if your habits stay the same, if your beliefs stay the same, right? You may not be stuck in that old situation, and you may be physically free, but mentally, you still operate like you're not. You're still operating like you're not. You're still a slave. You're a free slave. You're the worst kind of slave. You enslaved because of you and your own mental value. You bound and tied to a thing that you refuse to let go. When it's over, it's over. I say when it's over, it's over. And so this is about internal residue. It's residue. You got to get the residue, get the dew off you. Get the dew off you. This is about internal residue. You know what? You still can get half residue. Go scrape your old bowl. Come on. Whether it's weed or coke. Go scrape your old bowl, right? Go put some water in your old needle, right? If it's residue there, if a child touch a table, I done seen kids OD in the news from fentanyl that they touched that was on the table. Some of us got residue in the inside, and it's still killing us. It's still killing us. And so even after you leave a negative situation, you might still carry fear. You might still carry a scarcity. Correct that, George. Thinking. You start thinking. You might have self-doubt, right? You might have unhealthy coping patterns, right? And so what happens is you recreate the same problems in a new place. And a new relationship, and a new violence. And listen, you can't run from you You can't hide from you, right? When you the problem, you the problem. It don't matter where you at, no matter who you married to, it don't matter what job you got, it don't matter what car you got. When you the problem, right? And if nothing changed, nothing changed. So if your thinking don't evolve, right? Your thinking got to evolve. If your thinking don't evolve, right, your environment won't save you. If your thinking don't evolve, your environment won't save you, right? You'll eventually reshape your environment to match your old mindset. You'll bring what's inside of you outside of you wherever you go. You the problem. It don't matter. When I went to Chicago, I still did what I did in Norfolk. When I went to New York, I still did what I did in Norfolk. When I first came to Winchester, I still did what I did in Norfolk, right? And so I had got out of Norfolk, but Norfolk hadn't got out of me. Somebody talk to me. Somebody talk to me. I'm telling you, the consequences of unbelief are devastating. The consequences of unbelief are devastating and dire sometimes, right? These people died. They ate manna from heaven and still died. These people died without the promise. They died without God just because they wouldn't believe. Right? I'm going to tell you something. Unbelief, it'll keep you wandering. They kept them wandering for 40 years, right? When they supposed to have been possessing, they was wandering. Some of y'all been wandering around the same relationships, going up and down, unstable, up and down in your mind, keep resurfacing and revisiting old relationships, just old stuff, old friendships, old intimacies. And listen, you wandering around, but you're supposed to be possessing. But you ain't possessing because you keep thinking about that old thing, right? And that unbelief, right? It keeps you doubting. It keeps you in doubt. You just unstable. It keep you doubting when you're supposed to be advancing. You're supposed to be advancing and move forward, but I don't know but what if this? And then you run around asking everybody what they think. What they think. I'm like, look, baby, look, you do what God say do. Listen, you got to live with it. Why am I going to tell you what to do when you got to live with it? I don't have to live with it, or I don't have to live with her, or I don't got to live with him. You got to live with it. You still doubting, you supposed to be advancing. And your unbelief, it keeps you remembering Egypt, right? When you should be inheriting the promise. It keeps you remembering that thing, what it used to be. You take the good parts out of it and you try to erase the bad part. You edit it yourself. It was horrible. Don't minimize it. It was horrible. You went through stuff after stuff. Unnecessary stuff. You was embarrassed, you was beat, you was broken, right? You was humiliated, right? You was mentally abused, you was emotionally abused, you was financially abused, and you want to keep going back. I'm going to tell you about the root problem, right? The root problem is just not trusting God. It's just not trusting God. At the core, they talked about all these melons and cucumbers and all fish, right? It wasn't about the food. Tell your neighbor it's not about the food. It's not about the food. It's about trust. It's not about paying rent. It's not about paying the bills. It's not about being lonely. It's about you don't trust God. It's not about what they gonna do, what I'm gonna do. It ain't about that. It ain't about that materialistic, external thing. It's about you just don't trust God. Call it for what it is. You know what he said, and you just don't trust him. Psalm 78 and 19 say that, yea, they spoke against God. They said, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Y'all know the answer to that. God had already parted the sea for them, right? But now they questioning if God can provide dinner. Are you stupid? He parted the Red Sea. And you're going to ask me, can he provide food in the wilderness? We're talking about part of the sea, slayed some enemies, and you questioning God, can he provide a table? Are you crazy? This is Psalm 78:19 say, yea, they spoke against God. Are you speaking against God? They say, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? And so that's how unbelief work, y'all. That's how unbelief work, right? It forgets yesterday miracles. Unbelief will cause you to forget yesterday's miracles when you facing today's discomfort. I know it's you got discomfort today. I know it don't feel good. I know you uncertain about what's going to happen. but you still should trust God. How you going to forget about the miracles of what he already done when challenges come? John the Baptist said, are you the one or should I look for another? That's the mindset that church people got today. You know it's him. You filled with the Holy Spirit from the belly. You the forerunner crying out in the wilderness, repent for the kingdom of God is here. You tell the people, I must decrease so he can increase. I'm not the one, but there's one that come after me whose leashes that I'm not worthy to tie or latch, right? And so you know he the one. You get in trouble, for doing a good thing, you in jail, and you say, are you the one or sure? That's and forget the miracles of the past. Just because you discomfortable today, right? And from an apostolic perspective, right? This is a failure to walk by faith in revelation. You got to walk by faith. To just walk by faith, you got to hold on to the revelation that God reveals to you, right? God doesn't just deliver you. He expects you to continue in him. How you begin, you got to continue, and you got to finish, right? Colossians 2:6 says this, as ye have therefore received Christ the Lord, so ye walk in him. And so you don't just start by faith, you gotta live in it. You gotta live in it. The foundation is faith. And faith is also a lifestyle. Faith is a lifestyle. It ain't just a belief. It's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. And let's talk about the Egypt mindset, right? And I want to kind of define it kind of clearly before we move on, because I don't want to be long. It's when they choose comfort over calling, right? What's comfort over calling? Comfort over calling is preferring what's familiar over what God promised. When you ready to settle, so many people settle with good and don't never move into God or better or excellent. They never move into problem. It's because they're comfortable. And they choose their comfort over their calling. They choose their comfort over their calling, right? They also fear over faith, right? Fear over faith. That's magnifying the obstacles instead of God. Faith in reverse, right? And they got memory distortion. It's a diagnosable thing. They got memory distortion, right? They romanticizing what God delivered you from. When you begin to romanticize what God delivered you from and not focus on where you're going, you get stuck just having a feel-good session, right? And then they got identity confusion. You know what identity confusion? That's thinking like a slave after being set free. How you gonna think? You know, so many people try to recoup their youth, and they try to and just for today's term, people judging Gucci Man for allowing. He did what he's supposed to do when a man robbed him. You make it live to go to another day, but they thinking about the old Gucci, right? When he's a new Gucci, how you gonna expect me to be who I used to be? And everything changes. The only consistent thing in life is change, right? And so you can't, and you're supposed to change. You're supposed to mature. You're supposed to grow, right? And so that's what I was saying. I can't go back to what it was when I'm not who I am. I was then. I am who I am today. And so and when I was talking about Gucci, right? Like, he's not the same person, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. The people that still thinking they're young and still living like they used to do, they haven't progressed. They haven't evolved. They thinking haven't changed. They stuck. They still slave, right? They still slave, right? Israel said, we remember Egypt. What are you saying? Israel saying, we remember Egypt. But God was saying, I'm trying to bring you into the promise. And so while they kept reminiscing and romanticizing about Egypt, it cost them the promise, right? And so people often romanticize what they've outgrown. You know, in prison we call them war stories. They keep talking about these war stories. They romanticize. They're making it sound good, but they not that no more. This is not that, right? And they crave what's predictable over what's better. They rather have what's predictable over what's better. They choose comfort over calling, like I said, right? And so even when they're moving forward physically, right, they're emotionally pulled backwards. And so you can be going towards the step, but your heart, it's like you say your mind, your body is here with me, but your mind is on the other side of town. And so you can physically be moving forward and still be emotionally attached to what's back there, who's back there. And eventually you will be back there. And so it's an internal battle, baby. Even after the deliverance, the battle moves inward. It's still work to do, right? Mm-hmm. You can step out of something for a moment or in a moment. He delivered them quickly, right? But getting it out of you, it takes intention, right? And so you can come out of something in a moment, but getting out of you, it takes intention, it takes repetition, and it takes time to get it out of you. Take that time to get it out of you before you make poor choices, right? And so the real transformation happens when you take the time and the attention and the repetition to get that stuff out of you after you get out of it, right? And so we got examples of like leaving toxic relationships, right? You out of the relationship, but now you got to get that person out of your system. And you got to get them out of their system. The fastest way to get something out of your system is to fast from it, to disconnect from it, right? No connection with it. That's the quickest way to withdraw from people. Look, people go through withdrawal symptoms with heroin, with alcohol, listen. So you got to kick it. You got to kick people. You got to go through the withdrawals and get it out your system. You got to detox. You got to detox from them. You got to detox from them. And so the people usually in a relationship, they finally get the courage to walk away, right? But internally, they still expect mistreatment. They still feel unworthy of healthy love, right? They get uncomfortable when things are stable, right? And so they either sabotage something good or they drift back toward what feels familiar. Even after they got out of the whole situation, they put themselves in jeopardy of going back or entering the same kind of relationship. Galatians 5:17 say that for the flesh lusts against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another. And so your flesh will always, somebody say always. Your flesh will always try to pull you back to Egypt, back to old habits. It'll always try to that's your flesh taking you back. Keep on taking you back. Your flesh will always try to pull you back to Egypt, back to old habits, right? Back to old thinking, right? Back to old identities. Why? Because Egypt requires no faith. It don't take no faith to go back to Egypt or go back to that thing or go back to that person. But promise requires trust. You got to trust God, right? And so you ask the question, how to overcome the desire to go back? Because most of us had those experiences. I know I have. Personally in my life, I wanted to go back to certain things or certain people and certain environments. I have that certain job, all kind of stuff, right? And so the desire to go back, usually it isn't logical, right? It's familiar. And so it's familiarity driven, right? And so even when you think about going back, it ain't even in your mind, you know it don't even make sense for me to go back. You already know it's not logical. It don't make sense. Why would I go back when I know what they're gonna do? When I know what's gonna happen? Like, but because of the familiarity, I consider going back, right? And how you get out of that, baby? You get out of that by renewing your mind. That's why Romans 12:2 say, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? And so you don't overcome Egypt by willpower, right? You overcome it by transformation. You got to be ye transformed, right? You got to be regenerated, right, in your spirit, right? And so you have to retain your thinking. Listen, retrain your thinking. You got to retain your thinking and retrain your thinking to align with God is saying, right? Not what you feel. You got to kill your feelings because the flesh and the spirit are fighting against, warring against each other, lusting after each other. They don't agree, right? They enemies, right? And so you got to remember correctly too. You got to start thinking like, you got to see it for what it was and not minimize it. Don't just think what you had to remember. Don't just remember what you had. Remember what it cost you. Yeah, I had good moments, but it cost me myself. It cost me my self-esteem, right? It cost me my reputation. It cost me nights of crying and nights of weeping, nights of pain. It cost me anxiety. It cost me a nervous breakdown. It cost me financially. It cost me emotionally. It cost me mentally. It cost me spirit. And so don't just remember what you had. Remember what it cost you. Israel remembered the food, baby, but they forgot the oppression. And women do this all the time in relationships. They'll remember what the guy did for them, but they don't remember what they cost them. They don't remember how they not they self no more. They don't remember the damage that it done. They don't remember what it took from them, what it robbed them of, right? Deuteronomy 15:50 say, and thou shalt remember that thou was a bondman in the land of Egypt, and the Lord thy God redeemed thee. And so the right memory protects your future when you remember correctly. Yeah, I can point out some good times I had while I was getting high, or where I was cheating, or while I was in prison. I can remember some good times. But if I remember it right, I was in pain. I was lonely. I was hurting. I was broken. And I only was doing those things to feel something, right? And so there's two dangerous memory errors, right? One of them is this, forgetting the pain. If you forget the pain, you're going to go backwards. If you forget the pain, you're going to go backwards, right? If you forgetting the rescue, forgetting the pain and then forgetting the rescue. If you forget the rescue, it makes you rely on yourself because it was God that did it. It was God. If you think you just go in and come out how you want to come out or when you want to come out, that didn't happen. It was God that rescued you. That's what salvation means. He ran in a house that was burning down and he saved you, right? And so now we got to remember, we got to forget the pain. If you forget the pain, you're going to be in trouble. If you forget the rescue, so you got to remember the pain, you got to remember the rescue, and you got to walk in the spirit, right? From an apostolic standpoint, victory isn't just mental, it's spiritual. And I tell you about the mental component because it's very important, but it's also spiritual. Galatians 5:16 say, this I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh, right? And so you don't defeat the flesh by fighting it directly. You outgrow it. You outgrow it by walking in the spirit, right? It's not really focusing on the fight. It's growing in the spirit. You don't desire it no more. You don't have an appetite no more, right? You don't want to go. You don't romanticize about it no more. You don't dream about it. Right? Your mouth don't salivatate about it no more. Matter of fact, you appalled by it now. What you once liked, you now hate. Once you once liked and loved, you now hate. That's how I was cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes 20-some years, packs, couple packs a day. When I was high, I don't know, might have got 3 packs, right? You know what I mean? And but now, because I'm delivered from it, I remember the pain and what it caused. I don't have an appetite. I hate the smell of it when I smell it, right? And so the idea is tied to what Paul said to us, right? Instead of obsessing over stopping the wrong things, this is what people get caught up even in church. They obsessed about stopping the wrong things. They should be more focused on filling their life with the right influence. Or the right influences, with the word, with the fellowship, with the mentors, with the pastors, you know. And so they're not so obsessed about stopping something, but filling yourself with something, right? And then they need to fix their eyes on the promise. Fix your eyes on the promise. 2 Corinthians 4:18 say this: while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things that which not seen. And so if you only focus on the wilderness, you're going to crave Egypt. But if you focus on the promise, you'll endure the process. You'll endure the process. You'll endure the pain. And so this is the final charge to you guys. Israel stood between Egypt and the promise. Their mindset determined their outcome. Jesus said, I set before you an open door. Right? What you gonna do? He said, I set before you blessings and curses. What you gonna do? And so Egypt standing before the Egypt and the promise. Some of us, right now in this moment, standing between Egypt and the promise, where we used to be and what God has given us. And our mindset going to determine what happened. For them, some died in the wilderness. Not because God failed, but because they refused to believe. Some of them ate God's food and still died. Miracles still died and missed God. Not only missed God, they missed the promise because of unbelief. John 6:49 says this: your ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, yet they died. I did a thing on fed doesn't mean failed. These people got heaven food, water from rock, missed the promise, then went to hell. Let me tell you something. God can sustain you. He can give you provision. He can give you something to eat. He can feed your house. You can have all the stuff you want, you need. You can see all these miracles. He can heal your body. But if you're not believing in him, you can still die, miss the promise, and go to hell. So here's the question. Will you trust what you see, or will you trust what God said? Will you trust what you see, or would you trust what God said? Because the truth is, if you keep looking back, you'll never move forward. You will never move forward. And if you keep thinking like a slave, you will never walk like someone with an inheritance. You will never walk like you're free. Don't go back to Egypt. God didn't bring you out just to watch you turn around. Don't go back.